Good evening and welcome to the Succession. My name is Silvia Liska, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Succession Friends. We are truly honored to support gatherings like tonight's, moments when art and thought meet and unfold in real time. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the artist talk between June Crespo and Marc Navarro, taking place amid this elegant and evocative exhibition titled Danzante. Is that the way? Danzante. June was born in Pamplona and lives and works in Bilbao. She obtained her BFA from the Basque Country University in 2005 and completed a 2-year residence at De Atelier in Amsterdam in 2017. In this exhibition, June Crespo transforms our space into a choreography of sculptural forms, cast, forged, found, and assembled, where the rhythm, balance, and material tension create an atmosphere that feels at once bodily and architectural. Her most recent exhibitions took place in 2025 at Le Crédac de Ivry-sur-Seine and at Galeria Erhard Flores in Madrid. In 2024, she presented her work at the Guggenheim in Bilbao. Joining her in conversation tonight is Marc Navarro, a writer and curator born in Catalonia who is presently based in Berlin. As a curator, he has collaborated with institutions such as the Fundación Juan Miró and Fundació Juan Brossa in Barcelona, as well as the Museo d'Art Modern de Tarragona. He is also co-editor of publications such as Assuming Asymmetries, Conversations on Curating Public Art in the 80s and 90s, and Curating Beyond the Mainstream, both published by the prestigious Sternberg Press. Marc and June's dialogue continues a shared thread from their earlier collaborations, an exhibition titled They Saw Their House Turning into Fields, which they realized together in 2023 at the Museo Centro de Arte 2 de Mayo in Madrid. 2 de Mayo is correct? Okay. The text for the Succession catalog, which is where?
You got.
I had it. It's
there.
on my chair. Sorry. This is the Succession catalog, which is really a beautiful publication. The text for the Succession catalog takes the form of a conversation between our two guests, a conversation we look forward to continuing here tonight. We are delighted to have you both, June and Marc, with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. I would like to start thanking Silvia Liska and the Friends of Succession for the kind invitation, also to all of you for attending and being here with us tonight.
And I would like to continue giving thanks to Bettina for curating the show and working hard with me for the show, and of course the Board of Succession for the invitation. It was a great honor to be able to work with this space, and I'm very grateful.
Well, I would like to start very simple by addressing this exhibition and the specific setting that you planned for Succession. And I would like to know a little bit more about the challenges and how was working and engaging with the architecture here at Succession.
Yeah, the first thing I thought for the space was to hold it somehow through 2 gestures towards the space and the proportions of the space, which were this work behind us and the vinyl print on the floor, which were working a bit as a background somehow, like gestures that they were really made for the proportions. And then the rest of the works were somehow an extension of previous lines that I opened a couple of years ago, and I continued. So the challenge for me while installing was once I installed these two stronger gestures, how to make it work and interweave with the other sculptures. And it happens that the key was actually to change the position of one of the main sculptures. I had to turn from vertical to horizontal, and that was a kind of radical decision that makes it easier somehow to find the place for its work. And at the end, also somehow the print on the floor, at the beginning I was expecting to be also that you could step on it and walk on it. But I realized while installing that I wanted to avoid that actually. So this somehow made us turn all the time around in a way that at the end the sculptures are placed in a way that they are also creating a sort of empty circle or like a sort of a square in between. And I was more and more aware of this, how the empty spaces and the in-between spaces are active somehow. So there is like a strong piece here, like irradiating somehow. Also now the sound is off, but actually the exhibition has a layer of sound, which is related with the ventilation system that is giving an atmosphere as well of sort of an invisible circulation that it stressed a bit the decisions towards the space.
Today we were like visiting the exhibition, and it was just really beautiful to see the people circulating around and interacting with the business. And you mentioned in previous conversations that this circulation, this idea of circulation was really important in this exhibition. I'm wondering if this is something that emerged here in the exhibition, or it's something that you were planning beforehand?
I didn't plan that much beforehand, but I guess it's a quality or like a fact that attracts me in every setting. When I install an exhibition or when I install sculptures, I'm really aware of this, the movement that it can suggest to the viewer or to myself actually, to somehow encounter its piece, but also to understand the relationship in between them and yeah, to install in a way that it's like something is calling me there, and I move and I go closer, and there is this distance of getting closer and distant. It's like dancing. That's why also I guess the title made more sense for me while installing and while seeing how people react in between. So at the end, when I install. Or when I made an exhibition, I'm somehow preparing a space for a possible or a potential encounter, in a sense that for me, sculpture is important in terms of body-to-body relationship and one-to-one relationship. And of course, also in freestanding sculpture, it's important to walk around and to really to apprehend the object you need to move and to sort of have this closer and distant, but also the roundness, no? Like to work around. Actually, all this complexity of the work is just displayed while you move like that, no? And it's a way of somehow like being more aware of. I mean, the encounter is not just with the sculpture; it's also with yourself, if you allow yourself to do that, no? So it's more about how the sculptures, with their presence, they are also giving you back your presence, and it's a sort of like a mirroring presence or living together, no? And in that sense, today was really beautiful to see a group of people in silence, like moving around, and it was already like a choreography.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were mentioning also the importance of distance in your exhibitions, and for me this is like key also because offers maybe two ways of approach the work, and for me there's this closeness that sometimes leads to a certain absorption, if you want, but also there's this more theatrical way to navigate your work, and it has to be like with the setting of the exhibition. And I'm wondering how you're balancing these two aspects in the work, this more like closeness and this very, textures and like this intricate making of the works, but then also the possibility of gaining space and also experience it like from afar and in the context of the wholeness.
Yeah, I think not just in the exhibition, but while working already happens this kind of detail, or like the texture, all the traces of the process that they are attached to the surface of the works are important to me. So I can't really get in this detail of, no, it has to be welded 1 centimeter and not more, or I have to really choose all the details. But of course, there is also this other more distant view, which is more related with an image that produced by the physical form. It's not just a body, but it's also produce also an image, not an image, but like a line or like an axe. Or here it was important to have this connection between floor and ceiling, and it's really like there is a body, but it's also like the extension of this body that is really narrow, but is there, no? So this outlined, which it's more like a drawing in this space somehow. I really feel it in these vertical works. But then, of course, there is this other time, I guess, where you can really read all the steps, the technical steps needed for casting this such a sculpture, no? With all the traces, and visible and readable somehow,
Yeah, in the interview we were also discussing this idea of the atmosphere and how this idea of creating an atmosphere was important. Also, maybe because in your previous exhibition in Madrid, we were also thinking about how it resembled a stage in a way, how it was like not immersive, but like creating some sort of like situation. And then I'm thinking about these ideas that we mentioned in the interview about the ecstasy of objects, and you were commenting something that I find really beautiful. You were saying, and I quote, "I'm interested in that thing that is neither the visitor, the sculptor, nor the space, but what unites all of that, not so much as an aesthetic experience, but as something that halts the course of the everyday. The power isn't located in the objects, there has to be certain availability. And I'm wondering about this availability. What do you need to enable this availability?
Yeah, it's a bit related with what I said before about the potential encounter, and that to happen, I guess, is a certain state or inner state that you need. And it's something that I try to practice with my own exhibitions, but also with other exhibitions, not to be unload or somehow, to empty also my own expectation of what I'm going to encounter, or not to try to guess what it is or which shapes, what is the origin of this shape or what it come from, but more like to really encounter what is in front of me. And in that sense, like to let the estrangement to happen, no? in terms of viewing for first time something and not project all what we had with us, no? What we bring with us. So it's a bit like a process of unloading to be able to encounter something really physically, and to let this, tell you something sometimes, no? Or I also like to think that when I start to work with a shape or like an object or something existing, I let these things live with me, and also let to realize how they look at me or what they are telling me. Somehow, not that much to put things on them, but to do the opposite, no? To listen what is happening and to follow in the process of course, I do some acts or operations, but then I'm really like listening what they are suggesting me. So it's more about like a negotiation, and the outcome is something that happens while I'm assisting or helping this shape to exist. No, it's more. I feel myself a bit like in a position that is not so much like trying to read something, but more trying to learn and to find somehow through these operations that I'm making outside. So it's also a sort of a conversation. What I'm manipulating outside or in between my hands is also reflecting sometimes what is more inner. So I also have a bit of alert to know what of my acts are resonating or I can recognize in the matter or in the articulation of things. So if something resonates, it has more chance to be at the end.
I think once you were presenting also this relation or this waiting or this revelation of the work in relation to your current state, that you were saying something like, okay, sometimes the work is ready, but you cannot really see. It's only after some time that you really understand what you have in front of you, and you can really like recognize.
Yeah, it's true that actually sometimes it's even after sewing, opening the sew, and even later when I realized that the last few months I was working with something, because it's also a lot of conscious and unconscious decisions and handling. So sometimes there is not a topic, not something that is really obvious. Like there are a lot of, I don't know, intuitions, images, feelings, physical feelings, things that they are accompanying a process that is material process, but they are at the same time or in the same level. But I also push, or I try to not knowing, actually. It's something that I do it on purpose, not knowing, to get to know somehow, like somehow. Like I postpone this moment of knowing, like, because I find it rich to let it more open.
Yeah. So, coming back to the exhibition, I would like if you could offer to us some context about this fantastic work that we have here. And I think this is a work that relates to other works that you've been doing the recent years in Den Haag, in 6046, and then also in Solar in Madrid. Could you maybe give us some context? Why did you start working with this material that I think it's quite new for you, this track canvas?
Yeah, I would say that actually because this is more or less 1 year that I started to work with these kind of materials and ways of holding them. Of course, I mean, I don't work with projects, it's more about an ongoing practice. So I always, one work leads to another one exhibition always leaves something open that I want to develop. And in this case, what happens is that I wanted, in the exhibition we did together in 2023, I made a work that it was behind the wall and you could access just through some holes. And I really wanted to do more of them, or to have an exhibition that it could be just this idea or this kind of works. No? But till now I didn't have the chance of having an exhibition space which has these empty spaces in between, or that when you make a hole, you access to a real structural part of the building. So I wanted to develop that idea, but the place that I was working with was not the right one, because to do that I would have to make fake walls. So in that sense, I started to think how to make myself a flexible wall, like here, that it could hold already this in-between space or this empty space to circulate. And on the other hand, I was also working with tubes and pipes for the previous exhibition, so it was a sort of mix in between desires. And the not being able to do that was the one what actually made me invent this other way. And at the beginning, I was going to place, or I planned to place also some organic shapes inside the holes as I did in that wall, behind the wall. But of course, when I saw it, it was already so powerful and that I really have to, to assume it somehow. And now this is the third time I make this kind of work, and it was the first time I could make it that large, which is actually more related with the size of the track. It's almost the size of the track. And we are here, as it's big space, we are not really able to feel the smell, but we had it before in smaller spaces, and it's really like another component of the work, no? Like the smell, and then the sound that is related with it is also giving, it's part of this atmosphere that is created. And I guess in Solar, in Madrid, also the color, the orange, the red were also like irradiating and creating a sort of temperature for some other works living together.
No, also, I was thinking about this gesture of tightening up something on the wall that is like also very much present from before in your work. It's something that it appeared in works from the...
I think the first time I did this gesture was 2010, something like that, with a glass jar, something like this, with a t-shirt. And then from there, I realized recently that I repeated this gesture with many other things. Like it was also with the works at Kadoseme, they were really like big volumes coming out from the wall, held by straps with a lot of tension. And I think in all of them there is something that has to do with a life force that it wants to go somehow ahead. And it's also hold. It's a bit of a tension in between these two movements of holding and going ahead. Here I feel it slightly different because the volume is not that much. It's more about having these holes activated as well. It's really like it's also that I'm kind of obsessed with holes and they appear here and there in all different kind of works. It's not just this work that has contained holes and this circulatory quality. I think this is a hidden motive, like something that squeeze and appear again and again as an interest, which is this kind of interest that you don't know why, but they accompany and take shape in a different way each time.
No, you were mentioning the motives, the idea of motives, and one always has like this temptation of trying to identify what's in the work and what it's representing. But I'm wondering here in this exhibition, but also in your other exhibitions, what is the role of these motifs if these flowers that you work with as a model, if they are really a motive or just like excuse to then develop a sculptural gesture and maybe made of this gesture a motive, the real motive of the work.
This is actually what should happen for me, like that the motive is something that you encounter and it makes you engage. So it's a way of discovering what you really desire and you were not even conscious, aware of. So it's like the motive for me is something that you have to encounter. It's not something that is for granted or in the beginning. But it's true that I work many times or most of the time with existing shapes. So I'm working a lot with existing objects, or in this case, as I was a bit tired of myself of choosing more ergonomic or objects like toilets, saddles, objects which were related with the body in a way. I got a bit tired of that and of this idea of, okay, there is the mannequin, there is the hole, there is the composition that it brings somewhere else, but you still see the mannequin, and everybody was looking to, the figure, and I don't know, reading the work in a way that I was a bit annoyed. So in a way, at some point I decided, or I wanted to also, I don't know, challenge myself working with shapes which were at the beginning already more abstract, and I spent a few like months or 1 year like collecting small pieces of organic shapes, or sometimes part of flowers, sometimes other parts of plants. And then at some point I had the show at the Guggenheim, and I had to decide to start with one shape that I wanted to enlarge. Also, this happened because I was working with a model which was quite big, and instead of making miniatures of the works and placing them in the model, I was directly putting flowers inside or putting tubes inside. So they were already like this relationship in between tubes and stems or flowers and other shapes was already there. And this is how I decided the scale. No, like I put it on the model and I saw, okay, this in the real space would be like 8 meters. So I decided to like sort of 3D scan an Strelitzia, and then to change the scale to complete this scale of 8 meters in total. And in a way, I think I choose that to make this scale change of the scale, I choose the Strelitzia in that moment because I already felt it was a strange flower. It was not really like a delicate or like with a lot of, I don't know, like thin parts that could be difficult to cast as well. So I think I thought as well that in this scale already the stem was going to be immediately related with pipes or with other hidden structural functional elements of architecture. So it was like, a shape that it was a plant, but it also resembles an animal, but it also resembles something that it could be functional. And I like this complexity that, so when I choose my starting points, this complexity has to be there already somehow. But then, of course, what I like is that, or what I try is that in the process, there is a detachment from this beginning, and the shape has to be transformed, either not just through the material transformation of the casting and metal casting or concrete casting, but also like leaving all the traces of the process very visible. I think is a way of like making very transparent and speaking also about the work itself or the labor. And also this idea of the full, but also the fragment, no, is very present, the fragmentation of these bodies somehow. So here there is a couple of departing points, and in that sense they are repeated and variated. The repetition is also important in my practice and very visible here, like the way there is almost the same sculpture but like a slightly turned or slightly, I don't know, different just because of the materiality. So I work a lot in this combinatory method of having the same shape repeated. And of course, that has to do a lot with working with molds as well, which is inherent.
And then, of course, there's all the work with textiles, which is also very predominant and kind of like very recurrent in your work. And once you were mentioning during a conversation that the appearance of the textiles was also, in a way, a strategy to edit a little bit the sculpture, and I would like you to explain a little bit more how does it work with the textiles to edit the sculpture. What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, sometimes it's really that I don't like one part and then I hide it with a textile. This is, to be honest, sometimes it's really because of that I start to introduce textile. But of course, I realized with time that what was the function of the textile in my work, that for me is a bit like a career of all these experiences we have, the tactility or the experiences everybody has related with the textiles in different ways, either clothes or carpets or blankets. So it's really a career of affects, and also is the way the way I use usually to introduce color, because I don't like to paint or to dye materials. It's just the color of the materials themselves. And yeah, it's a way of revitalizing the work as well for myself, like to include another way of falling or of stretching or being like embracing. So it's not just the textile, it's also the gesture or how it's applied that is also doing or telling or making something, no? Like it's not the same to feel it tense or to feel it loose or to feel like the pleasure of falling, no? I don't know, it's like this is my language to speak to my body or to, like it's part of the language, how is, applied a gesture on them. And then I remember very well, I liked it a lot, a text you wrote for this catalog, describing some works I had made of bronze and steel saddles in different positions. And those works were covered with a really thin veil or like more translucent textiles. And we were speaking about the fact that covering was the way of making it appear, no? Like this hiding to make it appear. This double movement. I like how sometimes the textile is the way of that to happen somehow.
In relation to what you were mentioning, I would like to also go back to an essay, a short essay that Sylvia Levin wrote for the catalog in CA2M. And I want to read a very short fragment. And she was describing your work, saying that on the one hand, you were working also with Strelitzia in the show, and she was referring to the magnified plant organs. They appear to focus the viewer's attention on the matter that transmits life energy from one body to another. On the other hand, that attention is rewarded by a glimpse of complex machines made of protuberances as well as of soft and hooded surfaces that are neither natural nor technical, but also neither male or female. All such categories become hybrid in the networks of biotechnologies. And I find this very, very interesting because I think it's recurrent when it comes to your work to present it as a binary organization of materials, like you have the hard and then you have the soft, or you have the organic and the inorganic. And I think in a way it's wrong, because actually what matters is like the encounter of these materialities. And so I would like you to explain maybe in your own words how this work, how these encounters are working in your work.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know actually. It's just that I know how I make it, and I know that I have everything at hand and like around in the studio at hand, and also close to my view. So the only way I think of putting things together is because I can see them together in the same space, and they are close to me, and I can catch it, and so it's really impulsive, or I don't know. It has to be with collecting and having them around. And sometimes when I'm almost about to leave the studio, I'm able to see something in a way that I was not seeing it before. So I can grab it and put it together. No, it's like a bit of a desire or like an impulse. So I guess this is the way I put things together. Of course, I'm usually working with many works or different works at the same time. So the elements are usually circulating in between them until something I feel that is fitting. Sometimes it's because of a proportion, sometimes it's because of a color, or like what happens, like a friction, or so. I guess it's what happens. What is not this and this, but what they made together is the important, no? So it's not about the contrary and to balance, or it's more about to make something in the together, no? Like in the articulation in between them. So in that sense, I also don't think on opposites or contrary elements or qualities, but more about how they build something in between, and if it's ideally they become something like an entity, So I cannot really detach one thing from the other. Could be that they are really amalgamed or like really mixed or not that much. They are one just next to it, but they are creating something that you cannot detach anymore. This is how I understand it.
And then also, of course, the idea of the structural. What's structural, specifically when you work in like an exhibition like this one, that is like so much related to the architecture, and the way sculptures are presented is precisely in relation to the building. So I'm also interested about these operations that help you dilute a little bit the distinction between what's structural and what's dependent. And yeah, maybe you can explain a little bit about these operations that we find here.
I think they're at the same level. The chain and the work, I mean, is one. It's not, you cannot really say that one is, I mean, it's the only way that we can see this work that way is because it's hanging. So it's really, and actually this comes usually because I'm working in the foundry and they have already the grain and the chain, so sometimes I cannot really detach from what I see, so I have to encounter. It's not something that I think about, it's just that I see it and I recognize it and I want to keep it if it works for me. So I remember very well making the smaller hanging piece over there that I started to weld it hanging and I really wanted to be able to touch the floor, so I extended with small pieces, and when I had no more material, I had to extend it with a cable. Actually, the cable of the welding machine was placed in the work, and at the end I kept it because it was the way of touching the floor and extending the volume. So this comes everything from the environment I work with, or the elements that they enter in the work has to do with, as I said before, that I can grab them, they are at hand. So yeah, it's not something that I don't think that much in display, or it's more that they become part of the work. And here, of course, we had also to make these openings on the ceiling to make it possible. And there are things happening because of that, there is a natural way of dealing with what we need for this to happen, Like not hiding anything or...
And then, of course,
also in the concrete work,
yes,
all those metals, they are, at the beginning, the work is made of wax, and I have to somehow scaffold it to be able to work in this position with the two bodies together. And then all those structural parts become like inside the wax, and I melt the wax, but the mold is keeping all the structure together in a way that when I put the concrete, it's already inside again. So there is this the structure is the one that it was since the beginning till the end, even though all the material is changing. So I guess it's a bit of a skeleton, that holds things together.
And then in Madrid, I remember that you mentioned that also with this particular piece was a little bit challenging because, of course, in relation to foundry, there are many accidents that are occurring without you having any control on them. You were mentioning also that how this was giving like a different, not only aspect, but also relation with the work, because so many factors were like...
in this particular work happened that not all the metal went through the mold, so some parts were missing. But I found that the shape and the shapes as an outcome of this accident were really fitting. So this is something that occurs a lot in my work, that there are technically things that they are not going well, or I'm not master on that. So I use all this in my advantage usually, or I sometimes introduce things that they can create cracks or hollows or things that I cannot control. And it's always really, it keeps me very committed or engaged with the work, not to be I have to solve in every step. I have to face something that I didn't know that could happen. So I have to really be reacting and changing sometimes radically the process of the path of our work.
Also, very present in your recent exhibitions are these scans that you are enlarging and then presenting as sort of carpets or wallpapers sometimes. What's your relation to these photographic images and also to the scans, the activity of scanning objects?
That started more or less in 2010, or that I was making a small ensembles, and I made a couple of artist books which were called Scanografías, and it was exactly this. I was like scanning objects and small sculptures, and since then I kept this practice ongoing, like in parallel to my sculptural practice. So at some point, I was using some of those scans in publications, mostly, not that much together with my sculptures, but 2 years ago, I started to include it as well as a background in the wall, or to create a space inside the space, which is really flat, but it really creates a boundary, or like in a previous exhibition, I had it with some sculptures on top, and here, at the beginning, it was planned to be like that, but then I was, pulling them out because they were not needed. And actually, what I liked is that, as I said in the beginning, that it creates more like a hollow or empty space. Yeah, but I was mainly using it in publications, like to create, a parallel work.
I wanted to quote something that you published, this beautiful diary of a production in the catalog of Guggenheim, and you were talking about the pleasure in the mix, taking pleasure in the mix in relation to the amalgam. And then also you were listing 3 examples of different combinations of materials. And so I was thinking about these procedures that you've been using maybe since the first time we encountered and have a conversation about your work. And you were talking about the bricoleur and the layering in your practice. Could you maybe explain a little bit more about this pleasure in the mix?
Yeah, I think when I wrote that, I was really thinking about, trying to understand what's the difference in between the works which are really, where materials are really hybrid and mixed, and when they work more like a juxtaposition, no? Something close to another, one material close to another, and how they work differently in a way. And how in one of them the material behavior is really present and could be a translation of some other organic or bodily processes. And it's a bit like in those bronze sculptures where there are some parts where the aluminum is melted inside the bronze. Because in the process I am leaving some of the parts that I should, I'm supposed to remove them, but I leave them in a way that in the process of casting, the aluminum has a melting point which is lower, so it really melts inside the bronze, and it makes these stains and hybrid parts in between the two metals. I like this idea of one material integrating the other, and I was also making much more experimental works where I was putting inside a mold different materials, waiting a few days, no? Like in between. So it was more like an experiment. It's also like that work behind with the resin. It has a lot of layers and mix. There is a bit of having fun in this mixing. So it's also to encounter like reactions that they are sometimes not right in terms of technique, but that create like brackets or things that I have to work with afterwards. So there is a lot of, it's like a reveille or like to be like doing something not properly, but that it creates, I mean, it's fun, but it also creates something that is unexpected.
Yeah, and I was mentioning the diary that was published in this beautiful catalog. But also, I had the immense pleasure of working with you with this catalog, and now we have the beautiful catalog from Secession. By the way, today, for the ones who are interested, you can get one of these copies at the desk. So I'm mentioning this because I know how committed you are after working together in one book, how committed you are to the editorial process. And these books, they all happened like one after the other during the period of 3 years. And I think it's very interesting the way you not only organize your work and try to translate your work into a publication, but also how you think about documentation and how to convey all the qualities of the work into a publication or a photograph or documentation. So could you maybe explain a little bit more what's your relation with this process of editing the work and then presenting it into a publication?
Yeah, this, like, it happened to me that I had the chance of having to publish very, like in a short time I did too much, or like too many books. So at some point I create like a practice of having someone with me, like just taking pictures from time to time in the studio or in the foundry. I was also, well, I do a lot of pictures of my work in progress, just also for myself to work, but I was aware of having to make a book, so I was also producing material that it was not just the professional documentation of a show, which is, of course, important, but it's much more neutral and cold. And I wanted somehow to bring these aspects, more dirty aspects of, or the potential of the work to the books. No? And yeah, at some point, I don't know if it would be the same if I was doing just one book, or it became a practice, and I already have someone documented. And sometimes I give some instruction for this person, but I also like how he looks to my work, and so I like that he can spend like hours there and really look to all these details that we were talking in the beginning, no? That you can really get lost in the surface, and he's really enjoying it. So that's why I choose him to be with me for the photos, no? Like so it's and yeah, for the book here, there is also a lot of like repetition, like in a way it's a translation of how I look to my work, no? Like there is a lot of, I mean, if I check my phone and the pictures I made, there is like, it could be like thousands just for one work. So I wanted to bring this somehow to the book because it's actually how I look my work. I'm like going closer, farther, and I'm like in, I don't know, like scanning somehow. So this, I don't know, the layout has to do a lot with how I looked at it and how it's like a fragmentary view as well.
And just as a conclusion, I would like to ask about a question. We've been talking about this many times, and it's the idea of disciplinarity and how you present yourself as a sculptor. Why do you think this is important to you, and in which way is helping also to present your work in a certain way?
Yeah, I think because it happens to me before that I don't present myself as an artist, but more as a sculptor. And I guess there are many reasons, but one of them for sure is that I come from a country, or like in Basque Country, in my context is really like a strong tradition and influenced by many generations of sculptures, and I think in my school already was really like important. But apart from that, of course, I had more references which are more international, and most of them are like female sculptures that give me like a model of commitment with the work and give me a strength to keep working. That's on one side. But I realized that it's not the same to name myself artist or a sculptor in terms of how I feel committed with my work somehow. Like I feel that I have to, it's more focus, and then I have to commit more because it's more specific in a way. And this I realized just before when we were talking about, no? I didn't thought, what is the difference of presenting myself as a sculpture? And of course, it doesn't need to be that I always work with a sculpture. I can work with other mediums, but my mindset is from a sculpture, like it's more that the medium can be broader, but the way I think has to do with the space, with the body-to-body relationship, and very materially engaged. So I guess it's because of that.
Thank you.